Hey y'all, Jackie with Jackie's Recent Things. Today we're going to do some pumpkin glam. We're going to do some turquoise and navy blue pumpkins. The tutorial is available in my group. We made these together and now we're going to put them to work for us. We're going to use this teardrop frame, and this teardrop, realistically, we're going to take the tip up. It's really only 20 inches long and it's only like 13 inches wide when we start. These pumpkins at this point are just a little bit big for this, but we're going to make them fit. And I'm going to show you how. What I have here is some teal value mesh. I cut it 30 inches because it is value mesh. And value mesh does fray quite a bit, so we're going to roll this under. And we're only going to roll it under a little bit because we're just wanting to stop the fray. And we're going to give it a really good ruffle up. Now the reason I chose this color is because a lot of the ribbons that we're going to use are navy blues and silvers. So I definitely wanted to use the turquoise teal as our foundation. I always like to start at the bottom with my first tie. Now the whole idea to this, when you're using mesh, especially when it's not a Christmas wreath, you want to make sure that you're covering up the evergreen tips. And that was the other reason that I cut this 30 inches. It's because when you're using value mesh, it is incredibly thin. Now the easiest way to make sure you're putting these 5 inches apart, your mesh is 10 inches long, so from here to here, that's 5 inches. So that's where I'm going to aim to tie in my next piece of mesh. Now I'm kind of going out toward the tip because we need this frame to be bigger. Now be careful, don't tie your mesh in too tight that it does this. Mine went back in and it'll lose the shape of the teardrop. So I'm going to come back out and keep it angling up. Teal is becoming a really good year-round color. It's good for summer. Now it's really coming into fall and winter. So it's actually becoming one of the staple colors in my collection. So now that we've put all of them up that side, we just need to put them straight across. kind of looks like a tutu. That's one of the things about the value mesh. It looks more of like tulle. So you actually end up sometimes getting a more delicate look using value mesh than if you use regular mesh. I'm going to raise that one up. Because the top is so much wider. I really like putting a piece of mesh in the middle to add another ribbon tie. Isn't that pretty, y'all? Value mesh does have its purpose. So before I decide how long I want to cut my ribbons, most of the time I cut them 14 inches, but I have found sometimes when I do the evergreen teardrops, it's not enough because I add more to it and then my ribbon gets lost. So let's see how well our pumpkins fit now. And I would say that they fit pretty good. So what I want to start doing with my ribbons is I want to start bringing in the other color element that I chose to add. And then I chose to add some gold into this with the teal. But for our ribbons, we're going to do the gold and navy blue to really come out of our base. And we're just going to use the 2 ribbons for our base. Now, from previous experience, because I do add picks and things like that, I am going to cut my ribbon tails 16 inches. That's 2 inches longer than what I typically do, but don't worry, we're going to add a support system to them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I thought that's how many I had. Just double checking, y'all. It's 10. We need 3 more ribbons. So what we're going to do, y'all, is as we go, we're going to add a little bit more height and width to our teardrop so that our pumpkins don't overwhelm it. One of the disadvantages to value mesh is it is quite snaggy. Now, when I tie my ribbons in on an evergreen teardrop, I do untie them where I put the mesh in. I have found for me that the ribbon does lay better when I do that. So I will untwist this until I see my mesh, and then I will tie that down. I tried to do it like I do on a mesh wreath, and the ribbon seemed to float. And I didn't want it to float. It didn't look the same on the teardrop. Fall can be any color that you want it to be. I would never limit yourself on what you think your decor has to be based on how everyone else decorates. Decor is a lot of times a very personal experience. So right now, yes, the ribbons do look a little bit too long for this project. But as we go and add things, that will change. Because this piece is so long, I'm gonna tuck it back in under the mesh. So the reason that I pulled another color in is so that our main features, the pumpkins, would stand out more. This style wreath that I'm making was one of my top sellers last year. It was introduced last year when I started making my own fabric pumpkins. If you don't like the navy, you can do burgundy and gold. You don't like the gold, there's just so many color combinations that y'all can do. So right now I'm checking my shape, just making sure it's a little bit off at the top, but we'll deal with that later. Mostly because once we start putting in our picks and stuff, it's going to make a big difference on how the ribbon lays. Right now it's not worth fighting with the ribbon because it's just going to move because it is so long. All right, so now that we got our ribbon and mesh on, come back, we're going to start working on putting our pumpkins on and making the bow. We're going to start making the bow. When I'm making the bow, I actually wanted to go pretty far across the wreath. If you have a Bow Genius, it's actually pretty simple to measure how wide you want it. Seven inches is too much for this wreath, so we're going to do 6-inch loops. So I definitely want to keep the glam going in the wreath, but we're actually going to add some natural elements as well. This is a Dupioni ribbon, and they do make really nice bows, y'all. And I do want this to have a really nice tail on it. So I'm going to make my tails 8 inches. Now, one thing I like to do is put the two main colors together, especially in the bow. So I'm going to grab my teal next. And I want to make these tails a little bit shorter because I want my Dupioni ribbon to stick out a little bit further. Than the rest. Now I want to break my colors apart and my pattern apart because I've already put two pretty dominant patterns in. So now I'm going to come back with more of a solid So I'm going to come in now with the solid gold. And I'm going to make 2 loops with it. So now I'm going to rotate back up to my navy and silver. Then to pull in more of the solid and not glittered on the wreath, I'm going to come in with a very solid, no glitter ribbon. Now the reason I'm using this ribbon on the top is because it's a pattern that's not in the pumpkins or on the wreath, so it's really going to help my bow stand out more. One of the reasons I strive so hard to keep my workplace clean and free is so that you can see clearly what I'm doing, and there's not an abundance of things sitting around in your way to clearly see the project. So it does take me a little bit more time. So I don't want my bow that far down, but I still have to go put the pumpkins in. But I want to make sure that my pumpkins nestle into my bow. So I'm going to kind of mock place my pumpkins just approximately where I think I want them to go. it's really important that when you're fluffing your bow out, that you touch each and every ribbon and every loop and form it the way that you want it to go. So now we want to nestle our pumpkin in. So the first thing you want to do is decide how you want your pumpkin to sit. I want mine nestled pretty close to my bow. If I have to move my bow a little bit, that is what I will do. To get my pumpkins where I want them at. If you feel like one pumpkin is enough, just use one pumpkin. So I don't want my pumpkin like this because we're using two of them. I kind of want it at a nice angle, and I'm going to be really picky about which way my stem faces. I don't want my stem to face out like that because I don't want my customer to poke themselves in the eye with the stem. So I kind of either want to keep it to the side or kind of to the back a little bit. I also want to focus on my patterns. I want to make sure that however I attach my pumpkin, that all of my patterns that I have chosen to make on my pumpkin show up. Now, a little trick, if you're not able to keep these tilted up, just wedge a little piece of styrofoam to your desired height or tilt. Like I said, I really want this pretty snug on my bow. I don't want there to be much space. I can rearrange my bow a little bit as I need to. So now I want to decide how my other pumpkin's going to sit. And the reason I want to do that before tying this down, because I can always tilt this way and this one that way a little bit, but I don't want them to be perfectly straight up and down like that. So I kind of want a little bit of tilt to both of them. And then I'll check and make sure that all my pattern is visible. So I'm coming to the top to attach this first. I'm not exactly sure when I do this where my bottom attachment point is going to land, so I always do the top first. I can always push my pumpkin up and create my next attachment point. I don't want my stems facing the same way, so that's why I twisted that. And now I'm pulling the pumpkin tightly to the frame. Oh, I pulled my pipe cleaner out. That happened because I tried to put the hot glue in after. lost hold of my pipe cleaner. I keep losing grip of my pipe cleaner. See if I can get it this time. So now I don't want to take it for granted this because this is wobbly. So now is where I'm going to come in and put my next tie in and pull this pumpkin down a little bit. Because we don't want our pumpkin rocking and rolling. Okay, so now that we have our pumpkins on, and we have a nice placement of our pumpkins, and it's really, we're ready to start adding some of our greenery and our picks. And that part actually goes pretty quick. One of the picks that I have to bring some of the teal in is, this is actually a Christmas pick, and it's a twig. Then we have some gold leaves. And then to keep the scroll going, we're going to add a couple of these picks. And then also, we have some white sunflowers. Glitter last. Glitter last. Now this pick is really, really long. We're going to cut this down quite a bit. What we're going to do is I'm going to leave the pick basically intact, and I'm just going to grab the tip off of this because it's actually really too long for our project and I want the color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this tip off, and then I'm going to cut it down here and combine the two together to make it thicker. Let me show you. So that when I place it in, it's thicker. And I can fan it out just a bit and create a little bit of wispiness. I got these last year at Old Time Pottery. So like I said, I'm cutting the tip and then combining the two to where they're about the same length. Make sure when you hot glue your picks in that you're sticking it deep into the evergreen. That one I cut just a little too long. I'm gonna grab that piece off and add it back down here with the rest of them. Now, yeah, you could put these on a pick machine and combine them, but the biggest reason I won't do that is because the pick machine will put something very sharp, and then I have to make sure that that's not going to scratch a door later on. Now this is a wire pick, so I can kind of bend it however I want to as well. Sometimes it takes a little bit more effort to get the look that you want. You just need to remember that effort is rewarded. This ribbon is bothering me. We're going to adjust it. It seems to be further out. So I'm just going to pull it further into the middle. And that's better. One thing I want to remind you of, it's not always about how much time it takes to make something. That shouldn't be your biggest focus when you first start out. Your biggest focus when you first start out should always be the end product first. The only competition you should be running is one with yourself, not anybody else. So that added a nice touch of wispy to it. But before I go adding more gold, I'm kind of not feeling good about that right now. So I think I want to go and add my florals first, because I have a lot of gold sticking out. And I mean a lot. Right now I would have more of a tendency to add silver than gold. So I'm going to take the leaves off. I don't want to introduce green into our arrangement. I got these white sunflowers last year at Michael's. Notice I'm not palming that face down. I'm tipping it in. I'm giving my sunflower a natural tilt. And don't accept the way your flower is. Peel the petals apart if that's what you have to do. Now, if you're going to clip leaves off, remember you could save those to put on pumpkins. So I used groupings of 3, and I went top to bottom, side to side, to lay out my sunflowers, because even when using a straight up and down, a teardrop or anything like that, you still need those groups of 3 to really break things up and keep the eye flowing around. So I'm starting to notice, now that I put the yellow down, the gold is starting to tone down just a little bit, but we still need more of the pop of the turquoise. So I kind of want to do it in a fun, elegant way. And I'm going to bring in my 2 shades of turquoise together. Now, because we are using an evergreen base, I'm going to have to use a pipe cleaner to finish off my hand bow. Now, the biggest reason I'm doing this is because I really want to use the gold leaves that I chose. So in order to do that, we kind of got to tone down some of this gold. Now, because I introduced this ribbon again, we're going to use the grouping of 3. And I'm specifically talking about this one because I introduced it again. We're going to use the grouping of 3 to have it blend into the wreath. So this is my middle, that's the left, so now I'm going to come to the right and I'm going to come right here. That's also an empty spot. That is the second break in that ribbon, y'all. The other break is in the bow, and it just kind of died off in a perfect spot that it wasn't that big of a deal. At least it's not a big deal again. Because at least it's where I'm going to cut the tail off. But That's two breaks that was not far apart, y'all, at all. Alright, so like I said, we're going to put the other one right here to keep the balance of 3 going. I hope that you're paying attention as I do the balance of 3, how it does balance the wreath back out. Now, because this is a teardrop, I could have probably got away with just top and bottom. So I'm going to turn this back so that you notice how we have turned toned the gold down, and now it's become more of a splash of color. We pull this out straight so you can see. I want you to notice as I'm pulling my ribbon out, this is the most important reason why you should pull your ribbon out, is because every time I pull some out and I put it back to where it belongs and where I want it, it's exposing more gold. So that's why one of the biggest reasons it's so important to continuously fix your ribbons as you go. So what I have here is some little teal pumpkins. That was something else that I really wanted to incorporate into this wreath. Now we don't need the leaf. So with these two, I'm going to kind of put them down to the bottom. And I'm going to the right and left of my sunflower. here at the top, we're just going to kind of shoot them out the top. Of the sunflower next to the pumpkins. And I kind of want that a little bit shorter, so I just pull that stem out, and then I'm just going to wrap this one around here to make it easier to attach in. Now these are wired and they're very easy to move. So I don't have to necessarily worry about that until they cool off. Make sure that when you're using picks like this that are papery, that you put a little bit of extra glue in there, because you definitely don't want your pick to fall apart because of that paper. So now we're ready to add our gold back in. And I'm going to make sure that I put it way under. And the reason I want to put it way under is because I'm trying to pull the gold more to the center. Right now it's out at the tip, so now I want to pull it more to the center. And the biggest reason I wanted to use this pick and make sure that I got it in there was because this is a fall wreath, so I really wanted to add that leafy texture of fall in here. I love making the pumpkins. I love creating things that are going to stand out that you can't go to the retail store and buy. Now I want to pull a little bit more of that gold to the center to really tie it in just a smidge. So I'm going to grab a couple more. And I'm going to come right up and center and out. And we may just need the one. But I really wanted to pull that in to the middle to the pumpkin. And I think, y'all, this wreath turned out just absolutely amazing. It has a beautiful balance of color and shine and glitz and glam. This would be perfect to decorate somebody's doors for fall. I hope y'all really enjoyed this tutorial. I actually really love doing these fall pumpkin swags. They're super fun, super easy, and they are one of the best sellers I've had since I started making them. Thank y'all so much for joining me. Bye, y'all.